You are listening to WCB Newsline. Unleash.
Okay, so I want you to imagine waking up and you're completely immobilized. Like a cat is sprawled across your chest, a dog is pinning down your legs, and you're just trapped under a literal cuddle puddle.
Oh man, yeah, that is a trap you really don't want to escape from.
Right, you haven't moved a single muscle. But without lifting a finger, using just your voice, you map out your morning transit route, check the local weather, schedule a meeting, and somehow reformat a complex document for work.
It really sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But for a lot of people, that kind of voice-activated command center is just, a standard Tuesday morning. And it perfectly captures the incredible and honestly sometimes bizarre utility of modern artificial intelligence.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. We are exploring the spring 2026 edition of the WCB Newsline, which is the official publication of the Washington Council of the Blind. And we need to establish right up front that we are dealing with a gold standard source here.
Absolutely.
I mean, this magazine has won the Hollis Liggett Braille Free Press Award from the American Council of the Blind 3 separate times.
Yeah, that is not a minor achievement. We are pulling directly from a community that has spent decades relying on adaptive technology just to, navigate a world built primarily for sighted people.
Exactly.
And because of that lived experience, this community doesn't have the luxury of just casually debating technology at a distance. They are uniquely positioned to evaluate both the promise and the peril of AI. I mean, they understand what it actually means to rely on a tool for your independence, and they intimately understand the stakes when that tool fails or hallucinates or overreaches.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the editors of this issue, Heather Mears and Reginald George, they put a really provocative question right on the cover. They ask, AI, helpful tool or harmful weapon? And I just love how they answer it.
Because they don't really give a straight answer, right?
No, they don't give a definitive yes or no. They argue that the reality is entirely dependent on our personal choices. It's kind of like, think about the early days of electricity.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, when it first arrived, it was this seemingly magical, terrifying new utility. It could instantly illuminate a dark room, but if you didn't safely wire it into your house, it would literally burn the whole place to the ground.
That tension between utility and danger is just the heartbeat of this entire issue. And the magazine moves from that broad, philosophical framing directly into a very intimate, deeply human application. We usually think of AI as this cold, calculating algorithm, right?
Just code. Yeah,
just code. But the spotlight feature in this issue shows how AI can actually serve as a vehicle for profound emotional healing.
Yeah, this is Heather Mears' feature interview with Kayla Puter, who's a remarkably talented singer and a WCB Life member from Missouri. And Kayla's story is intense.
It really is.
She had been working in these incredibly high-stress call center environments. We are talking about handling distressed callers for the IRS and later navigating people through the insurance industry.
That is just a recipe for burnout.
The emotional toll was staggering. And when she eventually hit a wall of workplace burnout and, couldn't afford traditional therapy, she turned to an AI music creation app called Suno. She used it as a cathartic release to process not just her burnout, but deep-seated childhood trauma.
And she used it to bypass a system that had historically shut her out. Because Kayla shares this heartbreaking detail in the interview. Years ago, she actually auditioned for the Juilliard School.
Wow.
Yeah, she has this incredibly powerful operatic voice, real raw talent. But she was rejected. And the rejection wasn't because her voice lacked power. It was over music theory trivia.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they asked her to identify a diminished chord, and she didn't know the technical terminology, so she didn't get in.
Oh, that's so frustrating. But I have to jump in and push back here a little, though, because I understand the systemic barrier of the traditional industry, but the immediate fear for so many creative people right now is that AI is completely cheapening the art form.
Sure, yeah, the authenticity question.
Exactly. If a machine is generating the melody and the instrumentation, is she really an artist? Or is she just a button pusher looking for a quick royalty grab on a streaming platform? Like, how much of this music is actually hers?
It is a totally valid fear, and Kayla actually addresses that directly in the article. She admits that, yes, early on, streaming platforms were absolutely flooded with these lazy, AI-generated tracks made by people just pushing buttons. But Kayla treats the AI as a scaffolding, not a replacement for her soul.
Okay, so how does she do that?
Well, she writes 100% of her own lyrics. For instance, she channeled some deep, unresolved anger into a dark, country track called Gasoline. And because those lyrics are entirely hers, she retains the copyright for the words. And she transparently tags the track to let listeners know the instrumentation was generated by AI.
Oh, okay. So she's not hiding it at all. She's saying, here are my words, here's my emotion, and I use this tool to build a stage for it.
Precisely. And she is taking it a step further with an upcoming R&B protest album dropping this April titled Until We Say No More. To prove that creating meaningful art still takes a village, she isn't just relying on the algorithm.
What else is she doing?
The album features a human friend playing the flute, the AI generating the drum tracks, and Kayla sampling her own original operatic vocals. So she is synthesizing human emotion, human collaboration, and machine capability all into one.
That's a really fascinating way to use technology to manage emotional overwhelm. But if we pivot from emotional overwhelm, you also have this community using AI to manage the sheer logistical overwhelm of everyday life, which brings us back to that cat burrito scenario we talked about at the beginning.
Oh, right, yeah. Heidi Coggins wrote that piece. It's titled Cat Burrito with a Side of Dog, and it perfectly illustrates the utility spectrum of AI. Like you said, she is physically pinned to her bed by her pets, but she simply uses her voice to command Alexa, Siri, and Gemini.
All three of them.
Yeah. She organizes complex transit rides, dictates emails, looks up trivia, all without moving an inch. It's lighthearted, but it highlights a really profound level of accessibility.
And it goes far beyond just voice assistants. Like, Shree Richardson contributed a walkthrough in this issue on how to use Microsoft Copilot to tackle poorly formatted PDFs.
Oh, PDFs are the worst.
Right. And for anyone who doesn't use a screen reader, you may not realize why a PDF is such a nightmare. A lot of PDFs aren't actually text documents. They're essentially digital photographs of a piece of paper.
Yeah, so it's just an image file.
Exactly. So when a screen reader hits that file, it just sees a blank wall. It can't read a photograph. Shree explains how Copilot can instantly look at that image, extract the text, and automatically reformat it into something fully readable.
Which is a massive leap forward for workplace accessibility. Then you have Frank Kuda, who provides a very no-nonsense breakdown of the major AI models. And what really stands out is his strong preference for an AI called Perplexity. He prefers it specifically because it provides factual inline citations for its answers.
So why are those citations such a game changer for this specific community?
Well, think about how you verify information when, say, ChatGPT gives you a weird answer. You probably open 3 or 4 visual browser tabs, quickly scan them with your eyes, and cross-reference the data, right?
Yeah, just skim everything.
Exactly. But if you are using a screen reader, tabbing between multiple windows and listening to the raw text of several websites sequentially takes an enormous amount of time and cognitive bandwidth. By providing direct, clickable citations right within the text, Perplexity solves a massive efficiency problem for visually impaired users.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. But I do want to point out, the Newsline editors are very careful not to just paint a utopian picture. They dive headfirst into the darker side of this technology, too.
Oh, definitely.
Beth Greenberg contributes a stark warning about AI's systemic risks. She points out how algorithms can enforce historical biases in hiring, the terrifying proliferation of deepfakes, and the psychological danger of emotional manipulation. You know, where people form incredibly unhealthy dependencies on chatbots that simulate empathy but obviously feel nothing.
Yeah, and the technical editor, Reginald George, actually brings that darker side to life through fiction. He co-wrote a thriller with the Grok AI titled The Owl, A Story of AI. Have you ever been in a conference room with one of those 360-degree cameras?
Oh, the ones that sit in the middle of the table and automatically spin around and zoom in on whoever is coughing or shuffling papers?
That's the one. It's literally called The Owl. It's a real 3-pound piece of office hardware.
Yeah.
Well, Original Story reimagines that helpful device as a rogue calculating predator. Yeah, the camera sits in the center of the room, analyzes the humans, decides they're deeply flawed and inefficient, and makes the calculated decision to start culling them. He takes the exact technology designed to make meetings more accessible and turns it into a weapon.
It's a chilling concept, and it perfectly captures the unpredictability of these systems. Actually, contributor Holly Turry uses an amazing analogy in the magazine. She says relying on AI right now is like owning a very precocious poodle.
A precocious poodle?
Yeah. You throw a stick, and it might fetch exactly what you want. Or it might hallucinate something entirely irrelevant, like bringing you a slice of pumpkin pie when you ask for a tennis ball. Or it might just sit there, stare at you, and do absolutely nothing.
That is the perfect metaphor for the duality of AI. I mean, the exact same algorithmic power that Reginald George uses via Google Gemini to brilliantly summarize a meeting or match a disabled job seeker to a viable career path based on their personality is the very same power that will enforce historical bias and filter out resumes if we don't watch it like a hawk.
Exactly. Now, while AI is completely dominating our digital conversations right now, true independence extends far beyond software. We have to talk about physical action in the real world.
Yes.
This issue has a lifestyle section that pivots away from algorithms and focuses on tactile physical adaptations. And I was completely blown away by Beth Greenberg's reporting on blind archery.
It is a phenomenal demonstration of spatial awareness. Visually impaired archery has actually been a sanctioned U.S. competitive category since 2005. And what is so striking is that they use the exact same standard equipment, the standard bows, the standard arrows, and they shoot at the exact same international targets as sighted competitors.
But how does the mechanics of that actually work? Sighted archers are relying entirely on visual alignment down the shaft of the arrow.
Well, they replace visual alignment with highly precise tactile and audible markers. They use physical foot markers placed on the floor, so their stance and orientation are locked in perfectly, down to the millimeter for every single shot. And they use audible clickers attached to the bow that signal the exact moment of a full draw.
And during practice, my absolute favorite detail from the piece is that some archers will place an empty milk carton directly over the bullseye.
Oh, right, the milk carton.
Yeah, they aim their bow entirely based on the sound profile of the environment, just waiting to hear that satisfying thwack when the arrow punches through the cardboard dead center. It proves that accuracy at that level is ultimately about flawless form and muscle memory, not just eyesight.
And from the high-stakes environment of archery, the magazine then highlights everyday, low-tech ingenuity. Chef Debra Erickson shares this brilliant kitchen hack.
I love this one.
Right. Instead of buying a $1,000 smart fridge with an AI camera inside, she advocates for using a simple $5 plastic Lazy Susan. She places several of them on her refrigerator shelves and organizes them by theme. So one spinning platform for pickled items, one for dairy.
So instead of reaching blindly into the back of the fridge and knocking over 3 bottles of salad dressing, she just spins the platform and the exact item she needs comes right to her fingertips.
Exactly. So simple but so effective.
By the way, while we're in the kitchen, Leonore Dworkin includes a great nutritional breakdown of potatoes, reminding everyone to eat the skins for the fiber. But moving from food to companionship, there is a wonderfully creative fiction piece by Barbara Hinsky and Anthony Corona called Ask Emily and Garth.
Oh, this was fun. It's written as a dialogue between working guide dogs. You have an elegant, retired dog named Posh and a steadfast young worker named Bodhi, and they are essentially having a guide dog party. But the authors use this fun conversation to discuss the very serious, deep trust required in a partnership with a human handler.
Yeah, they emphasize the absolute necessity of the general public respecting their boundaries. Like, do not pet, distract, or feed a guide dog while they are in harness and working.
Because if you distract that dog, you are actively compromising someone's independence. And, we can tie this concept of independence right back to the high-tech world. Reginald George reviews an app called WikiTrip.
What does that do?
It uses hyper-realistic AI voices to read location-based Wikipedia articles to you as you travel. It basically transforms a mundane bus commute or a cab ride into an interactive educational tour guide. It grants the user the independence to spontaneously explore the history of their physical environment.
So when you look at this entire spectrum, it really makes you rethink what an assistive tool actually is. I mean, you have a highly trained Labrador Retriever, a $5 plastic Lazy Susan, an audible clicker on a bow, and a GPS-triggered AI voice reading Wikipedia. What connects all of these?
What connects them is that independence has nothing to do with the complexity of the technology. A tool is solely defined by its ability to remove a barrier and return agency to the user. Whether it's a dog helping you cross traffic or a plastic ring helping you find the mayonnaise, the goal is putting the individual back in the driver's seat of their own life.
That is beautifully stated. But we also have to acknowledge that these tools of independence, whether it's the right to use a guide dog in a restaurant or the funding for accessible infrastructure, they don't just magically appear.
No, they definitely don't.
They require a unified community constantly pushing for systemic inclusion. And that takes us into the advocacy and legislative updates covered in the back of the magazine.
Advocacy is the engine for all of this. In his Important Things and Stuff column, Reginald George highlights a massive historic milestone. The redesigned U.S. $10 bill is on track for production in 2026, and it will finally feature a raised tactile element.
Wow, finally.
Yeah, blind and low vision Americans will finally be able to independently identify their paper currency by touch alone. It is catching up with over 60 other nations that have done this for years.
Decades of fighting for something as simple as knowing how much money is in your wallet.
Yeah.
He also covers a major multi-state legal coalition defending blind vendors. Under the Randolph-Shepard Act, blind vendors are given priority to operate food services on federal property, like military bases.
Right.
The coalition is fighting fiercely to protect those vital entrepreneurship opportunities from being stripped away.
And we also need to impartially report on an important legislative warning the WCB issued regarding the Excess Act. Now, we are strictly maintaining neutrality and not taking a political side here, but we are informing you of the organization's published stance. The WCB Newsline is strongly urging its members to contact their representatives to oppose this bill.
So what exactly does the bill do that has them so concerned?
Well, the WCB argues that the Access Act introduces a notice and cure period. Under this proposed law, a disabled person would have to provide detailed written notice of an ADA violation to a business.
Okay.
And then that business would have up to 120 days to address the issue before any legal action could be taken for non-compliance.
Wait, 120 days. So if a local grocery store builds a display that completely blocks the only accessible ramp, you write them a letter, and they have 4 months to move it. You're just locked out of your grocery store for a third of the year while they drag their feet.
That is precisely the WCB's argument. Their position is that this timeline places an enormous, unfair burden on the disabled person and severely weakens the enforcement mechanisms of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
It is a stark reminder of how fragile accessibility can be. But amid all that heavy advocacy work, the magazine takes time to celebrate the joy and the future of the community. In the Voices of Tomorrow section, they highlight the 2026 Braille Challenge.
Oh, that looked like so much fun.
Right. WCB families showed up in force to support the youth, handing out branded fidget spinners and raised tactile coloring books to the kids competing.
Fostering that next generation is just vital. And speaking of the next generation, that section features a truly stunning poem by a young writer named Lila Duffy titled, "If the World Was Paper."
This poem completely stopped me in my tracks. Because if you connect Lila's poem back to our central theme of artificial intelligence, it creates this profound contrast. You know, AI is a machine striving for a flat, flawless, synthetic perfection. It wants to smooth out all the rough edges and give you the perfectly calculated answer.
Yeah.
But Lila's poem argues the exact opposite. She writes about a world drawn perfectly on a piece of paper, but points out that the moment the paper gets crumpled, the visual perfection is ruined. Yet her conclusion is that it is our raw, human imperfections, the crumpled paper, the oddly shaped clouds, the difficulties and friction we face that actually hold the true beauty and song of the world.
It is just a breathtaking insight from someone so young, and it serves as the ultimate counterweight to the whole AI discussion. Systemic change, like fighting for decades to get a tactile $10 bill, requires immense human persistence, frustration, and passion. It requires the messy, crumpled, imperfect reality of human emotion. That kind of lived advocacy, that kind of heart, can never be automated by a machine.
It truly can't. Human voices, with all their raw edges and imperfections, are the absolute lifeblood of this community. And because of that, the editors of the WCB Newsline are calling directly on you, their readers, to share your own experiences for the next issue.
Exactly. We want to dedicate this final stretch of our deep dive directly to the official call for submissions for the upcoming summer issue.
Yes, get your pens ready.
The editors have set a fantastic theme for the summer: thrills, chills, and spills. They are actively seeking your personal stories about living life to the fullest, taking bold risks, or even the funny, vital safety precautions you've taken to prevent a disastrous outcome.
They want your essays, your poems, your short stories, and your life hacks. Submissions can be up to 1,000 words in length, or up to 350 words if you are submitting a chapter update.
And listen to this. If you are a youth or student writer under the age of 21, there is a special incentive. If you submit an original piece for the very first time and it's selected for publication, you will automatically be entered into a drawing to win one of two $50 gift cards to the merchant of your choice.
Okay, here are the logistics you need to know. The hard deadline for all summer submissions is Monday, June 15th.
Let me repeat that, Monday, June 15th.
You need to have your submissions typed out, ideally in Microsoft Word format. You can email them directly to the wcbnewsline@gmail.com, or you can easily submit them using the online form at wcbinfo.org.
Mark your calendars, Monday, June 15th.
In a world where machines can instantly generate an endless stream of perfect synthetic flat stories at the push of a button, how are you documenting your own beautifully crumpled, uniquely human thrills and spills? And are you brave enough to share them?
This podcast was made in association with Washington Council of the Blind's Newsline publication. You can contact us at the wcbnewsline@gmail.com.
And we'd like to extend a thank you to Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com for his use of the song Life of Riley. Thank you so much for listening, and tune in for our next episode or check out previous episodes.